All right. All countdowns are disappointing, but not house party. House party is always fun. Welcome to the garden. And tonight we're talking some high level demonology. So say hi to Isaac from the Molok Mystics, and we should be joining by a few other members of the team if we get lucky. And we're talking about Moloch V3, also known as Baal.
Ball.
Um, Baal. Pretty exciting shit, to be honest. I was trolling their GitHub a while ago, and I was like, okay, now we can do this. Oh, okay, we can do that too. Oh, all right. Ah, cool. So, with no further ado, let's ignore our guest and ask Deacon and Ven what's happening at the DAO House ecosystem. How are you doing, guys?
Good. Yeah. I guess some just kind of ecosystem updates. We had just got out of the Raid Guild cohort kind of presentation meeting, and it was amazing. Every time it just is getting better. So in the cohorts, basically people will come on. There's a list of projects they could attempt. They can do their own thing and anything they want, and it's different people that are trying to join the guild. And this time there's just amazing things like a Web3 Calendly, a cool POAP bot for Discord, a lot of great things for Molok DAO, the Molok DAO, which was a sponsor this time, and some really great content, like very powerful content. So I'm excited when that comes out. Yeah, but just really cool stuff. Raid Guild's just kind of took a life of its own and is doing amazing things. Another kind of thing, which is why we can't have nice things. Another one of the DAOs in the Space Foundations DAO, which is our starter kind of DAO, and it was set up where people could put kind of low stakes. They could join with one house and become a DAO member. We did a rabbit hole campaign, and it kind of just exploded out of our control, like faster and larger than we expected. And the DAO wasn't really configured perfectly for that, and our front end wasn't configured to handle the number of requests. We got just over 30,000 proposals on the DAO, 4,000 valid ones, and over the last few days, one party tried to drain the entire bank, and they succeeded in getting a little over half of the bank, and we were able to block the rest because of the members that were able to rage quit. But yeah, it's a real bummer. But some of the maybe silver lining of this is the DAO is kind of activated now. They're talking about solutions if there's a way to kind of recover and build a community. They were starting to build some real good initiatives towards either like donating some funds to charities or to maybe starting their own product. And so there's still enough funds for them to do those kind of things. And we're going to try to reboot this DAO with some better kind of vetting and security measures around blocking these spam and attack proposals. So we're not getting just totally swamped where it becomes kind of impossible to deal with it. So, there's some other things going on around that with the person who took the funds, but we're going to see how that plays out over time. The Pool House, which is another DAO, which is a kind of the LP DAO, kind of wrapped up its first season, which was super cool. Their mission was to like pump the liquidity up on XDAI, and they kind of doubled what they set their goal. A lot of that due to the help of ETH prices rising, but the DAO actually beat ETH for ROI, which actually is kind of the holy grail right now. So that was really cool, and also really great group of people that are really passionate about getting some liquidity for us. Season 2 is actually going to be on mainnet, sounds like. The plan is coming together, and so the people in this DAO can stay in it, and new people will be able to join this mainnet liquidity DAO. And there's some interesting mechanics that the guys at FireEyes and James, have kind of wired up, and they're going to be putting that proposal out soon. So HAUS is coming home. You can see it on mainnet soon. And yeah, so I guess those are kind of the ecosystem updates. Still just, we're about to also, the core DAO House product team, we're about to release our kind of revised constitution manifesto, our roadmap going, into the future. We're really going to be focusing on kind of the composability of DAO House instead of it being kind of this central platform. That'll still be there, but we want to build this composability. We've been talking to like metaverse folks and different groups that want to be able to integrate DAOs in different spaces. And so along with V3 of the contracts, which are going to be opening things, there will be a whole new, very cool component utility and SDK kind of library coming from the front end guys. Yeah.
There's a little bit of a outside of DAO House ecosystem stuff that kind of relates to that, which might be cool to share with folks. There's this thing that spun up a few weeks ago called MetaGov, where they've been pulling in different people from different DAO frameworks to figure out like how can DAOs talk to each other, how do we represent what's going on in DAOs easier. So there's some interesting stuff related to like allowing DAOs to kind of show what their constitution is, show what they think about membership proposals, like not imposing strict standards, but just allowing DAOs to like communicate better what they do to other ones. So there's like, we've got Molok and Bill and I and Spencer have been doing some stuff over there. There's like the folks from Snapshot and Aragon V2 or V3 or whatever they're on. Some people from Deep DAO and DAO Stack and Colony and Orca, like they've kind of got this collection of folks that are answering hard problems, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that also plugs into V3 and stuff.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool. And that's something that we've been working on here too, and it's cool to align forces because one of the issues with DAOs and with smart contracts is the kind of the metadata that's attached to it, right? And like the constitutions and the metadata around proposals and all these things. And for most places, it's either that data is stored on chain, which is going to be really expensive, or there's a decentralized solution of potentially using IPFS or ceramic. There's a lot of different storage solutions coming out. We've been researching a bunch of them currently. And then there's kind of just more centralized options, which isn't the best, but it's kind of the single point of failure for a lot of things. And so it'll be cool to get us included where everything is over in some kind of distributed or decentralized storage. And then if everyone can talk to each other, that's even better, 10 times better. Isaac and Spencer are here from the Mystics. I'm also part of the Mystics. And we've been working on some new contract stuff. The Mystics is another DAO. They've got a Gitcoin grant up and stuff, so you guys can check that out. They're kind of an independent group that is working on Molok DAO contracts with people from all different places in the ecosystem that use these contracts. And so, I don't know, I guess there's some, like with Molok V1, we had limitations. Molok V2 solved some of those. Molok V3 is like the next level, going to be like where we have still some limitations in Molok V2. We can probably get into those a little bit and then talk about where Molok V3 is going to be like adding some new mechanics, taking some good things from other contracts, other DAO contracts in the space, and incorporating it, and just like where we're going forward. I guess, right now in the space, there's maybe 3 or 4 really popular DAO contracts or patterns, I guess. You got Gnosis Safe stuff and the things that are being built off of that. You've got Molok DAO contracts for sure, and then you have Compound and those kind of contracts. And then, Aragon has its own flavor, and that there's still DAO Stack stuff around, and still it's pretty awesome. But all of them have their pluses and minuses for different reasons, and all of them have kind of a different take on what's important. And so Molok DAO contracts are trying to stay to what's important to them, but also incorporating some of the things that have been awesome and learned from these other spaces.
Maybe that's a good place to start. Is like what were some of the principles going into Molok V3 development that the Mystics kind of set aside as like these are core things that we want to make sure are in V3.
Right, Spencer could probably talk to that.
I definitely remember like one of the things was like felt like everybody wanted it to maintain the one contract rule, basically.
Yeah. So I can kind of speak to what was important to me, and then I think what ultimately kind of became what happened. So I think two foundational things were, one, retain rage quit. Rage quit doesn't apply to all scenarios, but it is a really fundamental property of Molok DAOs. So maintaining rage quit and everything that kind of surrounds it or facilitates it was really important. And then number two, as Ben was hinting at, trying to keep the architecture or the experience of interacting with the contract as simple as possible. We've made some trade-offs to that specific goal, as I'm sure we'll get to enable some more flexibility and some more modularity. But I think maybe a good comparison is to, well, at least Aragon a couple of years ago, their architecture was like extremely modular and involved like a ton of just like multiple contracts for any single DAO. The goal was to, with Ball or Molok V3, was to maintain the property that you could have some kind of DAO that worked in a functional way with just a single contract. We've now added in some additional like modular capabilities to allow you to extend that, or maybe to add on to it in certain ways. But you can always start with a single contract. You don't have to compose a bunch of things together just to get started.
Right.
Yeah, part of that simplification was also just kind of collapsing a pattern that evolved in V2 land into a single contract with V3. A very common Molok DAO thing that's happening on V2 currently is that it'll have a minion, and that's because the core constructs of a single Molok DAO allow you to manage shares and funds and treasury and all that stuff, but no like arbitrary external interactions. But so many DAOs want to do things like collect NFTs, manage liquidity pools, and all of those then required at least one additional add-on contract to act as like a translator, where it's like, hey Molok, what do you want to do? And then actually go out and do that. So one of the things that Ball has is just that built right in, where like the core contract can interact with any arbitrary external contract through the same proposal process as a traditional proposal.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, there also was kind of a limitation in V2 of only being able to manage ERC20s and not like the native token, and not ERC 721s and 1155s. So the new contract also has that ability. There's still kind of this idea of whitelisting tokens, and so that's something that's in V2 that you need to whitelist a token. There's security reasons behind that, because people can sneak things into token contracts pretty easy that could maybe break a DAO. So that idea is still there, although the DAO can hold and interact with anything. But whitelisting allows it to be kind of put into this rage quit list. So that it's kind of interesting. The single contract can actually have both rage quittable and non-rage quittable bank inside of it. One of the things that a lot of people don't like about Molok is the rage quit stuff. And that was another thing that Minion helps with and solves, is able to have these non-rage quittable assets. Why have assets that are non-rage quittable? I mean, there's lots of different reasons, but a big one is like if the funds aren't actually the people's in the DAO, or if they've been earmarked for something, like maybe some payments to a contractor or whatever it is, then the DAO's already voted on that, and they don't necessarily need to be rage quittable at that point because they've already made their decision on how to spend those funds, but they're still held in the treasury.
Yeah, like a very specific example of a case where that can really mess things up is like we were setting up iRobot, which is kind of similar to Pool House, and we needed to create a pool, but like we had to know the exact token amounts for a transaction proposal. And if we did that, waited 3 days, and then somebody rage quit and like kind of messed up the balances that we had, it would have like caused a lot of delays in governance. So like yeah, allowing you to earmark funds out of the rage quittable treasury, but still allow you to spend them is super useful.
Yeah, and it's all through the DAO proposal. Go ahead, Spencer.
Yep. That said, the concept of minions, at least in one sense, is so as just discussed, is a lot of it is getting folded into the main DAO, which gives the main the ball or the Molok V3 contract a lot more capabilities and flexibility and power. But it doesn't mean that we want to fully get rid of the concept of minions or external vaults altogether. There's lots of reasons for having different accounts all governed or controlled by the same DAO. One of those is purely like for accounting purposes, having a bucket of funds that has been carved out for a specific purpose. Another would be, well, so the ability to whitelist or not whitelist a token in the main contract, as Deacon was saying, does allow you to have certain types of tokens that are not rage quittable from the treasury and other types of tokens that are. But you can't have one token that is both rage quittable and not. So you can't like have a balance of DAI that is rage quittable in your Molok V3 treasury and another balance of DAI that is not rage quittable, because it's all based on the token whitelisting. So if you have needs like that in your DAO, then having an external non-rage quittable vault is still valuable. And there's probably also other reasons to have minions that can kind of perform other activities. So while we're folding in a lot of what minions do today into the core DAO capabilities, we're still keeping the concept of minions in a more general sense.
Yeah. And one of the nice things about minions as they're used today is that it's kind of this little sandbox where a DAO can have funds and do some things where they're maybe riskier or experimental or something like that. And they're sandboxed away from the DAO. They really have no connection or power against the main DAO treasury. We also use them kind of to connect DAOs. Like we have DAOs that share minions and have kind of a child-parent relationship that way. So those things will still be compatible. We'll still be able to be that same pattern will still work with this new contract. What are some of the other things that from V2 we've kind of upgraded? Another big one is being able to change the starting conditions. So this is one that maybe everyone runs into when they launch their first Molok DAO on DAO or something, is that once you set your kind of conditions for how long your voting period and your grace period is, and what if you're going to have a deposit and things like that, they're set forever. There's no way to update that so without kind of upgrading the entire DAO into another contract. So those things now actually, as kind of a byproduct of having more minion control in the main DAO contract are now going to be able to be managed by the DAO. And there's even kind of a different idea of how proposal periods work, right?
How proposal periods work?
Yeah.
Minimum, maximum.
Oh, right, yeah. So there's like right now with the V2, you have your proposal period, which is like set for every type of proposal, no matter what you're doing. And in this case, you can set like a lower and upper bound, and that lower and upper bound can actually also be changed through a proposal. So you could say that all right, all DAO proposals have to have a voting period between like 2 and 5 days. But at some maybe early on in the DAO, it's like a couple people, and they're like, actually, we want like really quick period so that we can get stuff set up quicker. They could lower that minimum bound in the beginning, and then as they grow, vote on something to say, okay, we've got more people, communication takes a little longer. We should actually allow for like 5 to 7 days. Like let's say we're starting to deal with large amounts of money. It really allows you to adjust that in a granular way. We haven't also mentioned transferability, and most DAOs, I'm guessing, are going to not be transferable. But I mean, but it like creates this interesting thing where a DAO can vote on whether or not they want their shares and loot, or their voting and non-voting shares to be transferable like tokens. So, there's something. It's like this thing looming on the horizon that I don't think anyone's really played around with yet. But what happens when you start creating liquidity pools with DAO tokens? Like, what if you? I don't know. This idea might not make any sense. But what if you made like a share loot pool?
I'm actually gonna bring us back a step, and introduce. It's very simple, but introduce a mental model that I've been using to understand kind of all of the changes, or many of the changes that Ball or Molok V3 is bringing, which is like really I guess it's a theme, which is just added flexibility. So added flexibility, as well as more support for a fuller life cycle of a single DAO within the same DAO contract. So without requiring a DAO to make like fundamental changes to their HAUS, basically to the infrastructure that they're using, as they grow from a small baby DAO, and even if they grow much bigger to a larger, more mature DAO. So all of this stuff where we're allowing a DAO to change its initial parameters, change its voting periods and grace periods, change the transferability of its shares and its loot. All of that stuff is geared towards allowing a DAO to modify the way its own infrastructure works over time to best fit the way the DAO to what the DAO needs. And there's something that's really, really core to the concept of a Molok DAO, which is change and iterative adjustment over time of what exactly the DAO is doing and how exactly the DAO is doing that. The Molok DAO framework is really, really strong at this because it creates this very, very thin, pretty unopinionated governance layer, on top of which the humans that are in the DAO can add socially determined rules to define how the DAO is going to operate. But over time, and so what that means is that over time, the DAO can kind of iterate very quickly and figure out what rules make sense for it. And as it evolves, what rules will continue to make sense for it and what new rules it will need. So what we're trying to do, at least in part with Molok V3, is give DAOs a way to, over time, codify more of those rules and make more active adjustments to their own infrastructure to meet or to match the socially determined rules that they have set up and been playing with from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that part is just so key. I mean, like over time, over this past year, we've seen a lot of communities rise, and we've seen a lot of people try to start communities and things. and like not, having there's the first thing that happens when you go to like, summon a Moloch DAO is like, or any DAO really, like well, yeah, organizations needs change over time, right? So that's the thing we've noticed this year, like big time, is like when a DAO first starts, when a DAO first forms, there's like some rules that people put in. It's just like a few people putting rules together as far as like how they want to coordinate. But as that community grows, like the rules change. The community wants to change its rules until it, as it moves toward its like whatever its steady state actually is. So like it's a really big point to me because like if you a lot of people I think are thinking about building DAOs with like and they're trying to design it with the perfect end goal in mind and trying to build for this, like design everything perfectly, which just creates a kind of a friction point of you're just not really starting a DAO. You're just kind of like, yeah, because there's just like too many. You don't know how to define the outcome, the end game exactly. But yeah, being able to like lowering that coordination cost and being able to spin up a DAO and then now you can, iterate over time together. It should like create a lot less friction in like starting DAOs to begin with, and then also less friction in finding their steady state.
Another interesting social advantage is that the capacity to actually alter the governing style of the DAO leads to more people thinking about the governing style of the DAO, which is interesting for me. Like the
Yeah,
artistry, huh?
that'll be an interesting kind of side effect, I think. Second order effect. It still has loot and shares. That concept still exists, which loot being kind of your economic rights, what some percentage of the treasury, kind of signaling rights to the DAO, and then there's the shares, which are your voice rights, which are the people that are kind of the managing team, or they have direct execution rights against the DAO. I think that separation, although has mainly been used in a kind of a contributor investor sense in the past, I think that might become more prevalent in the future of like who really needs to have management, like who really needs to have that ops control, or who really wants it. And that's the other thing. Like there always needs to be that path, right? There needs to be a path for someone who is just happy to like have this economic rights, but if they want to be involved with the operations and the direct governance over things, there needs to be a path for that. Right now, in Molok V2, there's no way to transfer like loot shares and turn them into shares. You can actually go the other way, and what happens there is, if you're a shareholder, you can be rage or guild kicked, and your shares turn into loot. So you still have your economic rights, but you no longer have governance rights. But sometimes it does make sense to go the other way, and without worrying about like how dilution is going to work when you're switching someone over. So that's another thing that is more flexible and can happen through a vote. Like we mentioned, that shares could be now transferable. So this gets into the coin voting realm, which we've usually been very against. But in reality, like Vin and Spencer are saying, sometimes DAO's needs are different, and sometimes things change over time. And sometimes having transferable shares may make sense, and the DAO can actually choose that. So one of the hard mental models, I think, for people to get around, and this is something we took from the compound DAO contracts, is that the DAO is actually a token, right? The DAO is actually an ERC20. So shares are actually an ERC20, which opens up a lot of interesting things, like Isaac was talking about with composability, or with like shares being in liquidity pools and things like that. Let's see it. Oh, Joseph, Cup of Joseph, you got a question?
Yeah, I've been sending him invites, but didn't want to interrupt the conversation. This is a pretty dense episode. Be super cool if people in the audience want sort of further clarification. ask in the house party chat or raise your hand, because this is pretty intense. Like this discussion about the DAO being a token and you were actually being able to stake that into other things, it creates a pretty like new era possibilities of what DJs will invent out of this. Like I'm forcing my imagination here, but if you guys want to streamline it, I would enjoy that.
Yeah. Oh, and well, one last thing. So there's the shares and there's loot. There's also this new concept of delegation, which is another kind of thing, right? If you're a shareholder, you can delegate to another shareholder your voting power, but not your exit power, right? So there really is kind of that third layer, and this Spencer has been really a proponent of this. We haven't thought through this totally, but there's kind of loot, which is pure economic, shares, which is economic and governance, and then delegated shares, which are pure governance.
Yeah, there's also some fun Easter eggs if you dig through the contract, where like your shares of a DAO are also will also show up like an SVG style NFT in your wallet. So
Very
there's also
nice.
some fun stuff in there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the fun part. So like, yeah, your shares will show up in your wallet just like an ERC20 would, which is interesting. And then also, yeah, there's like an NFT kind of element to it that we're playing with. Each member of a DAO will have like a NFT basically that's visual and loaded with SVG that reads that member's data, like their stake, their membership, maybe even some traits or feats earned through the DAO. Just kind of like a new primitive we're playing around with.
Yeah, so when you're flexing your NFT wallet, someone will be like, "Oh, they're also in this DAO, and they have 100 shares, or they have 10 million loot, or whatever it is, you know."
Isaac, did you figure out how to make that work with the ERC20 shares?
Which part, like the NFT, the SVG?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it just calls balance of and renders that in the SVG.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're gonna talk about that later.
Shamans.
I'm seeing Joseph's question in the chat. Will we be able to upgrade V2's DAOs directly to V3 on DAO House, or will we have to launch a new DAO from scratch? I don't believe that the Ball or Molok V3 contracts facilitate that in any kind of direct way. Yeah, I suppose it's possible in DAO House we could create some kind of migration tool. So Molok V3 will have multi-summoner and I think multi-loot summoner as well, or some version of it. May not be exactly the same, but it'll accomplish the same goal. So that'll make migrating shares and loot easy. Moving funds is a different story, unless you have unless you're using a safe minion, and we're still kind of working that out. I think probably safe to assume that your DAO, if you have an existing Molok V2 DAO, you'll need to take some actions to upgrade it to Molok V3. But that's probably an area for DAO House to look into and see if we can facilitate that kind of migration more than just like leaving DAOs on their own to do it.
Yeah, the transferring the funds from the main treasury is the problem. But if you're using a minion safe, so minions are integrated with Gnosis safes, right? You could actually transfer that safe from one DAO to another, or share it between the two even. So there is that kind of flexibility.
Yeah. What about shamans, y'all?
Oh yeah, shamans. So
I think
we probably should have left more time for shamans, because it's
a good segue, though. I think. I mean, you probably use a shaman in a migration tool, right?
That's a great point. So a shaman basically has can be added to a DAO, which gives it super user privileges over shares and loot. And And like while that's very like that has very wide reaching implications, but something that is you can do for it is like this automated share issuance thing where anybody that meets these qualifications can get shares here. So in a migration scenario, you could probably design a shaman that's uh, like member says I want shares in this new DAO, and it like looks up what was their shares in the old DAO, and it maybe like mints them shares in the new DAO, or like anyone that holds this NFT can have shares in our DAO, and like all of that can just happen while shortcutting governance, because like the people have decided that these are the qualifications to become members in our DAO, and that allows you to like shortcut all of those things for and define these like different onboarding or share change scenarios.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. So the way I think about it, or I guess the closest kind of parallel would be with the Gnosis Safe. There's this idea of modules, right? So if you add a module to a safe, it's kind of got these superpowers it can do. It has unilateral control over the safe. So it's a very powerful tool, but it can be risky as well. But through the Molok DAO, the members would actually be voting on whether to enable a shaman. So before enabling a shaman, which is going to be this external contract with some logic that is going to do things with shares and loot. There's going to be like some DAO governance on and audits and things like that. Hopefully, before people enable this superpower. But some of the things I really like about it, like, imagine, things like Coordinate and things like source cred and other like reputation systems. They could actually, you could have a shaman in there that the DAO would vote on rebalancing the shares based on some outcome from those kind of things. So instead of currently in V2, because some DAOs actually do things like this where it's like, we just did our Coordinate and now you can go get, based on your give tokens, you can go get some amount of shares. Requires a proposal from each person. There's a lot of overhead there. With this, we could just kind of like have the DAO say, cool, we ran our Coordinate session. Here are the values from it. And now let's rebalance everyone's shares right in their wallet. So yeah, super powerful, but also opens up a lot of interesting things with reputation, with onboarding, like Isaac said. So we can have kind of these yeetable DAOs. Currently, membership is very permissioned in Molok V2, meaning every member has to make a proposal and has to then be voted by all current members on if they can enter with whatever they're requesting and whatever kind of tribute they're making. With this, we could actually wire up a receive function on the shaman to take some tribute that would be forwarded to the DAO, and then they automatically get shares without even a proposal. Or in that case, it probably wouldn't be shares, but loot. So you could automatically be giving contributors, but of some kind of monetary funds, loot in the DAO, which is the non-governance kind of structure there.
Yeah, both of these things are really awesome. I think like where Minion was like the external contract before to allow DAOs to kind of interact with like any other contract around Ethereum. Now that's been kind of like just moved into the core contract. So now, all Molok DAO V3 balls will be able to natively do that, interact with any other contract as well as other DAOs. And now that it's now the experimentation has kind of moved into this shaman realm, right? Which can be a tool both for formation of DAOs, collecting your initial members and collecting initial signal over, is this a good idea? Are people interested in coordinating around this DAO formation? And then that second big part of, like reputational scaling or any type of like, you can use shamans for all kinds of different, scaling mechanisms basically within a DAO. So super interesting new surface to explore.
Yeah, and we'll get like similar to how Gnosis Safe module and Zodiac framework is kind of like people are building on it, building new things. Through the shamans and the minions, there's a similar kind of extension framework for and plugin framework for the contract.
Yeah, so when we were talking about Molok v3 being focused on adding a bunch of flexibility for DAOs and supporting them in different ways throughout their the entirety of their life cycle, shamans play a huge role in that. And then all the other features that we've been the flexibility features that we've been talking about as well. I think it's important to remember, and sometimes I kind of have to remind myself of this when we're like talking about all this like crazy experimental stuff. Sometimes I start thinking, well, is this going to create a ton of risk for existing DAOs? And what I have to do is remind myself that that's maybe true, but only if those DAOs want to experiment with these new features. So it's important to remember that you can create what is effectively the same exact thing as a Molok v2 DAO with Molok v3. And if you don't want, you can never change. Like you don't have to ever change that. And it'll just basically have all the same, effectively the same security properties and like game theoretic properties as a Molok v2 DAO today. But if you want, you also have the flexibility to, as a DAO, so collectively, mutually decide that you want to start exploring all these additional options that Molok v3 adds. So it's basically just like a net increase in capabilities while not sacrificing security, essentially, for those that want to like hold on to just the core stuff that they know absolutely sure will be the same as it was before.
Yeah, increasing the agency, I guess, of the DAO, right?
Yeah, that's well said.
The yeah, did we have another question? Is your hand still up, Joseph? Or
Travis had some good ones here from a few minutes ago around. Let's see if I can succinctify.
He has questions around vesting and wanted to understand the trade-offs involved between trying to do it with shamans, minions, or boosts in DAO DAOs. But basically, this opens up maybe the discussion of how does the DAO interact with its possibilities of capital formation, either by receiving investment that's non-related to governing power or by using its shares as a liquid token. So that's an interesting discussion there.
Yeah, well, first question was, how did you guys, make decisions? Hold on, let me phrase it perfectly.
Oh yeah, that coming from Travis and myself. How do you decide what features to include and not include? And as anecdotal sort of opportunity, were there any features you guys were thinking of and excluded and things like this?
There's actually this there was like this architectural thing that we had to decide about. So I'm a big fan of the Zodiac framework from Gnosis, which allows you to attach any sort of governance to a safe. The thing I like about that is that a lot of DAOs start as a safe, and then you can kind of upgrade it over time, and that's how minion safes actually work. So what there's been this conflict, like in my mind, and also like we kind of just go back and forth on it, is like, what role does this separate upgradable treasury have in the ball ecosystem? Like ball itself should be this. Like we've kind of agreed that like through discussion that ball should be this. I don't know, like monolithic in a good way, standalone DAO in a box. But how do we make it so that as people are growing from where they're starting their DAO, that we can intersect them and provide them the right tools? So as it stands today, Ball can interact with a safe, but I actually had a version of Ball on a branch a month or two ago where Ball didn't actually manage any assets itself, and all of the assets were in the safe. But that introduced this like strict dependency on safes, which was a bit uncomfortable, I think, for some folks. But so right now it can do both, where it can manage a safe and it can have its own assets. But I think that there's still some unanswered questions about like, can we make it so that if a DAO wanted to have all of its assets in a safe, that maybe 5 members started a multi-sig and now they want ball, like, can we do it in such a way that they don't have to move their assets, but they can take advantage of all the governance that ball adds?
And I think, I mean, this is like hot off the presses as of yesterday, but I think, and this was like a side conversation, so I not everybody on stage here is even aware of it. I think we figured out that the answer to that is yes, with just a small gas efficiency trade-off. So we'll be trying to figure out how we can implement that. Basically, the idea is that a DAO, when it's being summoned, can decide whether it wants to have its rage quittable treasury as itself, like in the DAO contract itself, or use another contract like a safe as its rage quittable treasury. So that could be an existing safe that already has funds in it. Could be basically told to the DAO could treat it as a rage quittable treasury.
And you know what? That actually probably would work with the Rage Quit module and with the DAO shares being tokens.
So yeah, we could do it that way. I don't think the way that we were thinking about it, we wouldn't even need to use the Zodiac exit module you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah, we could try it that way. I don't think we would need it that way. I think there'd be a way to just have that be handled in the core contract logic itself.
Right. And as to the question about like how we were building it, huge props to Ross, who couldn't make it today. But he kind of started the initiative. Amin's input obviously has been huge. A couple others like Q or DAO Designer, I mean, and there's been a lot of different input from different places, and so it's an open source project, right? So that's basically how those things have been managed. We meet maybe once every week or every other week, and we'll talk about our ideas, talk about PRs that we've made, and then something eventually gets merged into the repo. Some of the features that are still kind of on the table. One is spam prevention. That's become a bigger problem as the Molok DAOs become more popular, and these people that just like to see the world burn find out about it. Not a problem on mainnet, obviously, because just too expensive to do any kind of spam attack. But we support a lot of different side chains and L2s, and it is kind of a problem there. So a DAO being able to turn on some kind of required tribute or something for a proposal may be something necessary in the future. That one's still just being discussed. Some of the architecture things, like Isaac said, still being discussed. How shamans work, being discussed a little bit. But we're getting down to pretty close to a place where it's going to be just locked, and then we can enjoy the audit process. And that question about the vesting, I don't know if I necessarily understood it. I saw that, like, I'm not aware of a vesting contract that allows multiple parties on multiple time periods currently. One thing that is really awesome about the Molok DAO itself is it's an amazing distribution kind of model because of Rage Quit. It's just like you don't even need to use a Molok DAO as a DAO. Some people do this where it's just and we've done it a lot, even in HAUS DAO or in the DAO HAUS core team, is you can kind of do an airdrop, or you can distribute a lot of tokens to people, and just by creating a DAO and then telling them to rage quit after you put funds into it. But yeah, for that kind of vesting, I'm sure there's something. I know the OZ ones are more specific to an individual, and you have to do like a new one every time you start a new period. We had a contract once called Trust that another contributor wrote that was able to like distribute shares over time, but not with those multiple periods. Anyways, I'm going down it. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
Yeah, I'm forcing my governance imagination away. Do we have any more questions from the chat?
So yeah.
Travis, you want to just hop up? You got some goodies, buddy, if you're able to speak. Well, I like this one from him if he's not around. Hold on, let me phrase it again, because again, his wording is the best.
Hi.
Hey, there he is. I really like your question about this. Like, let me see, where is it? Oh yeah, how much might you say the V3 contracts represent the ideology of this group? I really like that question.
Yeah, it's a little
Or
bit
maybe even
half-baked.
another.
And sorry if it's like a boring question, but I'm just thinking about the different agendas of each of the individual contributors. As you mentioned, there's an experiment here in consensus building, and in, you know, we would all like to believe, and I certainly do, that you're prioritizing the best interests of the community. But to the extent that the contracts are going to be the foundation upon which communities are built, and to that extent, again, like meditating on this code is law idea, you as the code writers, you as the legislators, I guess my question is, how do you find that your experimental consensus is encoded into the contracts themselves? Do contracts are coming to represent the conversations you're having human to human? And yeah, as a vehicle, I guess, for pushing forth a community first ideology on behalf of HAUS and the larger group.
Yeah, well, all I can say on that is like we're building on, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So the original Molok DAO had a very strong game theory component and a very strong meme to it, right? Things like rage quit and grace period and like, which are really things that are about like the game theory. So those, and then we also, over the last 2 years have helped deploy thousands of DAOs. We've worked with lots of communities, many of our own communities, and others, and we've seen where the pain points are, and we've seen the places where people want things. That was kind of where we were like, okay, well, rage quit, non-transferable shares, those are kind of key, but the flexibility is also what people want. So, and how DAOs mature over time and how their needs change over time is something that we really wanted to cover. So we kept with the meme, we tried to stay with the meme as much as possible, but just add the things that we've seen are important. And it's not going to have everything. It's not going to be the last DAO contract ever made, but I mean, every day there's probably 100 new ones being made by someone, but it's going to be a pretty good one, I think.
Right. I do remember a lot of the early conversations at the beginning of it was, totally like, the Molok DAO contracts have existed for many years now with solid game theory and has protected communities while they've done things. So that was I remember that being like a huge part of the early conversations was, this game theory is sound. So how can we enable, new abilities while protecting that sound game theory? And it was just like a very iterative process from there. What about like on the code side? Like, I know like Isaac, like there were like different kinds of like go fast methods. Like you just, would try out a new thing in a branch, and then there'd be conversations about each branch that people were working on, and then like things would be merged into the code, right? So maybe that would be an interesting point to reference back to Travis, was just like that merging of code, and when things became like kind of consensus enough to be like, yeah, let's put this in the main branch.
Yeah, it was I kind of like shoved my way in like just because I saw cool stuff happening. Like I think Deacon shared, hey, here's ball, and then I was on vacation and on a flight, and I was like, I'm gonna do a quick audit and see if I find anything. And so it was just kind of like putting it out there, and people responded, and then I was like, this needs TypeScript. So I did that, and then that got merged, and it was like, oh, cool. I mean, it's like that. It's that open source contributor feedback loop, which is cool. But then it's also weird because like you also want people to review your PRs, but like anything, it's hard to get people's time to read your code. So oftentimes things will just kind of like sit there, and you gotta ping people and be like, hey, do you actually like this new feature I added or not? So something that was really useful is we had these these stand-ups, of which one I missed yesterday, but like it was a time where people would actually get together and talk through some of these hard problems. Because like if you're just doing it entirely async, it would be, I think, impossible to merge code. But yeah, like a combination of having these like stand-ups, and then also just having people throw code up without being asked, has been kind of cool.
Yeah, as a non-coder, it was pretty beautiful to watch from my perspective.
Yeah, it's nice now to have some input on how this is happening, and it also the diversification of who's involved, all the new people being involved in the creation of these contracts from V1 to V3. There's probably like a trackable growth of the people involved and the inputs involved. But I liked the Travis's question, because it's a good standard question to ask when we see anything as a result, like the result of this collaboration. What are the unexpressed political positions that could be behind this? But as I kept reflecting about the question, I'm saying that it's actually sort of a chimera, right? It's a bunch of people following each other's stigmergy, and then you have a result that looks like a single mind's work, but it's definitely not.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that was actually an important thing for us too. And there was points where I was like, we should just own this in DAO House and do it our own way. But Vin and Spencer and others were like, no, like this isn't, these contracts aren't just for our product. It's for the entire community. And so we need to bring in other people and let it be open and create a third party kind of to manage this.
Yeah, it was all pretty much, as far as like where coordination happened, it was just like one channel inside of the Metacartel Discord that was just open to all.
Yep.
It was hilarious. People would come in and ask random questions, and sometimes hop in and like add some code, or help with some of the game theoretical problems. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, since we're getting close, let me just do a quick shout out to
Yeah.
Bill too, because I don't think I mentioned Bill. Bill Wilson.
Oh.
He's huge help in the coordinating force in all this. So, and he couldn't make it today as well. So.
Did we talk about POAP as well?
No, we're at the end, so time for people.
This is my favorite POAP of all time, and it keeps happening every week. Keeps getting better. Thank you, Adrian. And you guys can claim it using the bot. I don't remember exactly how it works. If Ben wants to tell us.
Yeah. Give me a minute, and I'll just follow just pay attention to the house party chat. I'll drop the instructions here in a second.
And thanks, guys, for being very, very, very open about everything that happened in the process. I feel that 1 hour was definitely not enough. And do we know when we're going to get to play with Bao?
Oh, yeah, that was another question.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to be locking down the code soon, within this month. Then we're going to be getting into some auditing. Anyone who has some Solidity skills or testing skills, we can use some help. but we were shooting for around ETH Denver, so Valentine's Day of next year, to have something really available and working.
You know what's also happening on Valentine's Day?
What?
The DAOist Denver. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Everyone's gonna
All
come
right. You heard here first.
to
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It's quite a big audience today. A very, very dense conversation. I'm going to be thinking about this for the rest of my night and tomorrow and again and again. Any other final shout outs? Anything Isaac or Spencer want to say? Vanilla, do you want to share your voice with us just so we have it a little bit?
No.
Aw, practical yet loving Vanilla, like always. Okay, I think that's a good one to end.
Praise the Shadow Lord, everybody.
Yeah. Wasn't me, Mom. Guys, this was our garden. Thank you. And thank you for invoking Baal. Let's hope it doesn't eat the world, or let's hope it does. I don't know. This was our house party.
Yes, thank you.
Ciao,
guys.
everybody.
Be good, be well.